Hello, everyone, and welcome to MDC CMT Let's Connect. We're so excited to have you here joining with us today. Just a few short housekeeping tips to get started. As you will notice, at the bottom of your screen will be a button that says Interpretation. We would ask you to select that button and please select the language by clicking on the interpretation button. And that way, so if you would like to hear the presentation today in English, you would go ahead and select English. If you'd like to hear the presentation in French, you would go ahead and select French. Also, we want to encourage you to please use the chat option to ask any questions. You'll see that the chat button is just 2 over from the interpretation button, so your third button from the interpretation button. So we'd encourage you to use that button if you have any questions that you would like to ask throughout the session. If you can just let us know through the chat, that would be wonderful. So we'll go ahead and ask you to click the interpretation button now.
Oui, bonjour et bienvenue à tout le monde pour cette session CMT et DMC, restons connectés. Alors, des petites informations à vous donner dès le départ. Si vous voulez entendre la présentation en français, s'il vous plaît, cliquez dans le bas à droite sur l'icône « Interprétation » et choisissez « Français ». Comme ça que peu importe la langue où seront présentées les diapositives, vous l'entendrez en français. Si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à l'écrire dans le chat ou le clavardage dans le bas de l'écran. Dans le bas de l'écran, vous sélectionnez chat, vous pouvez nous poser vos questions, on va vous répondre très rapidement. Alors, merci et bienvenue encore à tout le monde.
And thank you very much for accessing the chat. If you are joining us today via an iPad or an iPhone, you'll find your interpretation button at the top of your screen. So thank you so much. So again, the interpretation button is in the upper right of an iPad. So thank you so much. And now I would like to introduce our CEO, Stacey Lintern, for a welcome and a message from Stacey. Thank you.
Everyone, thanks so much, Danielle. Hi, everyone, and thank you for meeting with us today. It's amazing during these challenging times that we're able to come together in a virtual way. I'm going to be sharing some information with you around why CMT, why we're having this session here today. We want to better understand the needs of the CMT community. You know, CMT is a disorder that falls under our umbrella. We've heard loud and clear many times from our CMT community that often they don't feel well represented under our umbrella of MDC. We want to deliver the right supports that are meaningful and will make a difference. We really have a commitment of really taking an individualized, person-centered approach. Some of the CMT committee has shared, as I've mentioned before, that it's not clear how MDC supports the CMT community. We've tried today to pull this presentation together in a really thoughtful way, and all of my colleagues to help better inform you around how we are committed to meet the needs of the CMT community, but also to really solicit your feedback and input to make sure that we're doing a better job. We want to ensure that MDC provides a relevant, accurate, and current information so that all of our clients, the CMT community, can make informed decisions. There's lots of information that is out there. We've heard over and over again from our community that the information is fragmented in solid locations. So we really want to be that gatekeeper to help have a streamlined approach so that our community can make informed decisions. We want to work in partnership with like-minded organizations, the CMT community as a whole, really to influence positive change in 2 different ways. One, systemically, really looking at whether that be healthcare or community resources. Also working with individuals shoulder to shoulder to help advocate and express their needs based on their interests and their own desires and aspirations. We want to work in partnership with other like-minded organizations. We are not looking to compete. We want to only complement so that we can share our resources and leverage the best opportunities. This next slide, unfortunately, we didn't have time to translate it in French, but we're happy to send it to you after the presentation. As I've mentioned, CMT is under the umbrella of MDC. Muscular Dystrophy Canada provides supports for individuals impacted by neuromuscular disorders, actually hundreds of neuromuscular disorders. And it's important to know that CMT is the most common inherited neuromuscular disorder that we cover. While neuromuscular disorders are individually rare, there are collective commonalities. And we support a diverse community, as I've mentioned, over hundreds of neuromuscular disorders. And we also know that our clients have taught us that even a client who has the same neuromuscular disorder has a very different experience. But there are commonalities like access to holistic healthcare, so healthcare that is access to healthcare that is the right healthcare, access to treatments and therapies, and access to community resources as well for overall quality of life. This is sometimes a surprise for our community that we serve. We encompass hereditary and immune-mediated neuromuscular disorders, where the primary impact is on the muscles, the neuromuscular junction or nerves of the peripheral nervous system that connect with them. So again, a very diverse community. The selection of neuromuscular disorders are determined by consultation with our Medical Scientific Advisory Committee. So we have a very rigorous process where our staff have oversight, but in consultation with our MSAC committee, actually inform our decision of what neuromuscular disorders are covered under our umbrella. We have three main key pillars within our mission of our organization. As many of you know, a key priority of the organization is research, and we're going to hear from our colleague Daria, who's going to explain some of that impact specifically around CMT. We want to provide meaningful programs and services that fill critical gaps. We know that there are a lot of gaps within different systems, whether it's healthcare or community, where often, unfortunately, our community does fall through those gaps. So we want to be a key organization that addresses those gaps. We want to advocate for positive change with our community as it relates to public policy that will benefit all Canadians affected by neuromuscular disorders and their families. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Daria to share some information around our research portfolio.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you here today. I'm going to take the next couple of slides to speak more about our research program. Mainly, our research investments fall under four general categories. The first one being understanding diagnosis and disease progression. So these projects take a look at identifying what causes disorders such as CMT, and specifically, how do those genetic mutations lead to various different imbalances that we see on the molecular level that may lead to the symptoms, as well as taking a look at improving diagnostic tools. For some of the more common neuromuscular disorders, we've gotten pretty good at diagnosing, but we know that there's still more room to grow, especially in the more rare ones where there might be one or two individuals across the world that may be impacted by that particular disorder. In our second area of investment, we look at discovering novel treatments. So the projects that we invest in here are addressing both the root causes of neuromuscular disorders such as CMT, as well as halting or reversing the progression. And as well as looking at improving current therapies that we have available. So these two aims fall generally under the preclinical arm. So these are studies that are done in animal models. And the next two, number 3 and 4, are more in the clinical side of things. So we have advancing treatment and care. So taking a look at various interventions that may manage symptoms, developing wellness solutions, as well as building clinical trial capacity and effectiveness. So once we do have those treatments discovered, how do we make sure that they're available in Canada and we have the right capacity to run these clinical trials and really test if they're effective in making a difference. In the fourth aim, we take a look at initiatives and invest in research projects that manage healthcare. So identifying gaps in our healthcare system and how we can address these through policies. Taking a look at knowledge translation, as well as building up our clinical and research capacity. Next slide, please. So we're going to walk through some of the projects that MDC is funding. as they pertain to those four pillars that we outlined. So the first two projects, as you can see on the left, pertain to the aim of understanding diagnosis and disease progression. These two projects are looking at what happens in CMT after we have a genetic mutation. What kind of imbalances do we have in the various molecular systems? And really taking a look at which are potential areas that we can invest for drug development. So understanding what causes it and how the disease progresses is kind of the first step in developing those treatments. The next two projects that you see on the right are in the sphere of discovering novel treatments. Again, these are preclinical studies done in animal models, but this is an essential step in our ability to screen multiple different treatment approaches and as well as multiple different drugs before we go into that next step of clinical trials. The project from Dr. Alex Parker is a good example of our seed grant program. So our seed grant program aims at identifying projects that are novel, potentially from researchers who might come from other fields. Dr. Parker, for example, recently discovered with his team a molecule that is now in clinical trials for ALS, and he's using that exact same discovery methodology now for CMT. So some of the molecules that he is testing are already FDA approved for other disorders, some are novel, and the hope is that these hits will be then moved on to the next phase clinical trials as he's had done in the past with ALS. Dr. James Dowling's project is an example of our partnership funding mechanism. So this is a partnership between MDC as well as CIHR, which is the government funding body in Canada, and their equivalents in Italy, France, and Germany. We know for rare disorders, there's limited expertise, and in sharing these expertise and joining forces with other organizations and other researchers, this team was able to build a strong team to study CMT and drug development. Specifically, they're looking at CMT4, which is relatively understudied. Next slide, please. So for the third aim, this is an example of our investment in managing healthcare types of studies. So some of you may find this slide familiar. You've participated in our economic impact for health-related quality of life survey. This survey really aimed to lift the experience of those personally affected by CMT as well as their caregivers to understand health resource utilization, both from a medical side, but also from indirect side. So taking a look at how this affects families, school, workplace life, as well as productivity. And so we hope to share back with the community the results by the end of the year. We've received an overwhelming response so far. We have about 1,400 respondents. So we thank any of you on the call who have participated for your support of this project. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then the fourth aim, is investing in research that accelerates the pace of research and healthcare delivery across Canada. And towards this aim, we have partnered with the Neuromuscular Disease Network of Canada. We are both a partner and a funder along with CIHR. And the network aims at connecting both national and international members who have lived experience with neuromuscular disorders, as well as their medical or scientific experts. And they aim to both build shared national resources, so such as biobanks and registries, which are tools that are used in research, as well as clinical trial coordination amongst the various different neuromuscular clinics in Canada. They also aim at training, education, and capacity building. On the right here, you see an example of one of the webinars that they have available through the network. It is an ECME accredited webinar, which means for healthcare providers, they are able to obtain a continuing medical education certificate from attending these webinars. And we felt that this was an important aim because what we are hearing from the community is for more general practitioners, family doctors, or allied healthcare providers, there's a need to increase the knowledge available around CMT so that these individuals may be able to better support their patients. My colleague Homira will be speaking more about this last aim, knowledge translation, so I'll pass it over to her.
Thank you very much, Daria. So what Daria actually had on the last screen is an example of a knowledge translation activity. But before I do that, I should mention that I'm the Director of Knowledge Translation and External Engagement at MDC. So I wanted to talk about what this term knowledge translation means. And really it just means an exchange of knowledge. And we know knowledge is power. It's so important to be well versed in your disease experience, know about the biology of it, but also connect that with your lived experience. And so that's where knowledge exchange and knowledge transfer occurs. As part of the knowledge translation portfolio and alongside with Daria, we have a research hotline. So if you have any questions about your disorder, about CMT, or you see a latest research article on CMT, we welcome you to give us a call or email. We'll be happy to provide you with accurate and timely responses. We're also really grateful that MDC is in a position to work with the clinical community to get responses to your questions. So we have medical and scientific experts on our MSAC, but we also have a panel of experts as part of our Ask the Expert panel. And you might have been introduced to them if you attended our COVID-19 vaccine webinar most recently. As part of under the umbrella of Research Hotline, we also produce research spotlights. Earlier, when Stacey was talking about how CMT fits under that neuromuscular disorder umbrella, you might have seen a research spotlight image where it was looking at the link between hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss, and CMT. That was an example where we summarized the literature, the research so far, and some individuals with CMT commented and said, yes, this makes sense. This is something that I have. I thought my hearing loss was in isolation. And some were able to see that perhaps in the future I might get hearing loss, and it might be a relationship between aging and my disorder. We also have research resources that are available on our website. MDC also participates in patient-oriented research. So we work with researchers and clinicians across Canada as a patient partner. Daria spoke about CIHR being a large funding research body, a government research body, and we work on CIHR-related grants or smaller grants to represent the patient voice. But we also are able to be the liaison to connect researchers with Canadians affected by CMT. We're also working on creating patient partner and research modules. So when we talk about patients participating in research, some of you might have already participated as a subject or a participant, and some of you might have participated in the term of working on the research team, helping to say, this is my disorder experience. Can you test that? Can you look at different objectives and ways to measure that? We also have our education section. And so for that, we have webinars. Our webinars are available on our MDC YouTube page. These are plain language webinars, but we also have, to Daria, as Daria mentioned, ECME. So webinars that are catered to clinicians, academics, and researchers. Dr. Stephanie Plamondon is actually in attendance today, and she was one of our webinar speakers on everything you need to know about CMT or clinical and research updates. We're really grateful to have that opportunity to represent different clinicians from around the country. We also have conferences. This year, our conference was virtual, and the conference sessions are available online. And as I mentioned, Ask the Experts, with the most recent one being on COVID-19 vaccines, which we have a decision aid about. So if you haven't received your vaccine so far and you have a question about whether it's a right decision for you, you can review the clinical comments and then look at how to make that decision. Something new that we introduced this year is a virtual roundtable. I mentioned that it's really important to look at the literature, look at the evidence, and make evidence-based decisions, but we really want to complement that with your lived experience. And we know that your perception about your Canadian experience is very important. And as part of that, one of our first roundtables was with the CMT community. And I wanted to share the results of that roundtable. The roundtable was an invited panel of 10 participants affected by CMT, but I'm happy to share that the roundtable's experiences really complemented and were in line with the survey that was completed. We launched a survey in late 2020. We had 142 responses, and there were questions about day-to-day needs, experiences around disease management, if there were treatments, what were the benefits and risks, whether you have received sources of support, information sources, and an ability to share with us what are the gaps, facilitators, and barriers. And I want to just highlight some questions. So one of the questions was, of the symptoms and impacts of CMT, which are the most bothersome and why? And what was noted when we performed a thematic analysis was poor balance and lack of proprioception, chronic pain and loss of strength in the hands and feet, mobility challenges, fatigue, and sleep. This, as you're listening to the call, might sound familiar to your experience or might be different. As Stacey mentioned, we know that while neuromuscular disorders in general can be individually rare, there can be commonalities, but we know that the same person with two people with the same diagnosis might not experience the disease the same, but these can emerge as the top experiences for that question. We had also asked about what are the social or emotional consequences of CMT. And what came from that is fear and anxiety was one of the top comments. Frustration, grief or loss of independence, negative impact on personal relationships or ability to form networks. Parents had talked about in the survey about their children not being able to make friends as easily as those without a neuromuscular condition like CMT. Hesitation to participate. This is an important theme that emerged from this question. This is in line with the World Health Organization's model around disability and function. When you have a neuromuscular disorder or a chronic health condition, it can impact your function, so your ability to walk as fast or walk long distances, but also your ability to participate in different activities, whether they be activities of daily living or and other activities as well. It also had a negative impact on self-image and worth. We were also curious to learn more about how aging with CMT has affected you. Anecdotally, we hear that, as I've been aging, I wonder if the changes with my body are because of my age, or is it because of CMT, or both? And when you responded to the survey, what we heard is aging accelerated the decline. Disease progression became more apparent. There was a more rapid progression of symptoms, and a poor outlook was perceived. The question about how is your mobility impacting your quality of life? The number one theme that came from this is many responded that they can't do as much independently, or it takes them a longer time to do certain tasks, or they find that they're more sedentary, which we can imagine with COVID-19 and the pandemic and keeping safe at home, that might even be heightened. We had asked, how has CMT impacted your independence? Many spoke about an increased reliance on family members, friends, and formal caregivers. But I should mention that the responses for this question were varied in terms of, and it was moderated by disease severity. So for an individual who had a more severe condition, they tended to rely more on others compared to those who had a less severe form of CMT. In terms of what are your experiences with treatment, the more common answer was, what treatment? I'm not on treatment. And if they were on treatment, it was gabapentin, or they were receiving supportive treatments like AFOs, custom orthotics, massage therapy, or seeking orthopedic surgery more than once, as was mentioned at our ECME webinar. Weight loss management and exercise seemed to be really helpful, and physiotherapy. In terms of having difficulty getting diagnosed, what you see here is about 19% say they had a great amount of difficulty getting diagnosed, a moderate amount at 21%. So those first three bars are really showing you that there is challenges with achieving a diagnosis. And this is something we want to explore further at MDC to see what are those challenges and how can service specialists or system navigators who are in your province and in your region to help you support in terms of getting a diagnosis. We know that many times part of the neuromuscular experience is there's misdiagnosis or delayed diagnosis, and that's something we want to help individuals with. And then it is, okay, I have a diagnosis. What do I know about CMT? And did you have difficulty finding information about CMT? And again, you can see about 25% said a moderate amount, with again the first 3 bars highlighting that there is significant difficulty in accessing information about CMT. Kind of bringing it back to knowledge translation and research, one of our goals is really to bring this information to you on our website as part of these webinars and conferences. Another question was, how knowledgeable is your general practitioner about CMT to be helpful? And it's really upsetting in a way to see that the vast majority of the responses were about somewhat knowledgeable, not so knowledgeable, not at all knowledgeable. This does reinforce our ability to present these ECME webinars. This does reinforce our decision to enter a partnership to launch the Pan-Canadian Neuromuscular Disease Network to help support the knowledge and awareness of CMT and other neuromuscular disorders for the clinical community. And then we had also asked about CMT and family planning. As was mentioned earlier in this presentation, CMT is the most inherited neuromuscular condition that we cover, and over 50% were not aware of family planning. And so we do have a webinar on neuromuscular disorders and pregnancy. This is another topic that we'd like to present more information on and help support. Just want to quickly shift gears and talking about, the research that we support. We really want to move that into evidence in one way. So as we are supporting and funding these research projects, at the same time, we're taking those research projects and presenting them in webinars or research spotlights, trying to reduce the gap it takes from when a finding is found in a lab. Typically, it takes 7 to 13 years. We want to reduce that timing. And so with knowledge translation activities, but we want to do the same with also influencing positive change. So we take research findings, evidence, and your lived experience, like you outlined in that survey, to help advocate for equitable, timely, and affordable access to diagnosis and therapies. So should a treatment for CMT be available tomorrow, that we're really working on a strategy, like a rare disease strategy for drugs for rare diseases, so that it can be accessible in a fair and timely manner. We're also supporting comprehensive, coordinated, and high quality care for adults. One thing we thought in the survey is that those who had children with CMT had more comprehensive care. They saw a PT or an OT and more coordinated care compared to the adults who did not have access to more coordinated, high quality care. We'd also like to advance the equality rights, functional independence, and inclusion and community participation in line with that WHO, that World Health Organization model of persons impacted by neuromuscular disorders. What you're seeing here is just 2 screen grabs of our most recent letters to government around a call for newborn screening for a neuromuscular condition called spinal muscular atrophy, highlighting again the importance of early diagnosis. And as I mentioned, a national strategy for high-cost drugs for rare diseases. We're also really excited to announce that as part of our advocacy portfolio, our change agent portfolio, we want to really represent the patient voice in the right way, or the client voice, the community voice in the right way. And so we're doing this by connecting meaningfully with individuals with lived experience and clinicians. We have physiatrists, PTs, OTs on this committee, as well as young adults and adults from across the country, parents, who will really help strengthen our voice and help to give us good advice on how we respond to these different advocacy matters. I want to take a moment to highlight that Jaylee Pellissier is one of the individuals on this new committee. She is an individual who is a longtime volunteer of MDC and affected by CMT. We're really grateful to have her on the committee. Lastly, I want to talk about that 43% of individuals who responded to our survey require mobility aids, 15% use an electric or manual wheelchair, and 30% use a cane to support walking. And I want to highlight this as I pass it over to my colleague, Marie-Hélène, who will be talking about our equipment program.
Oui, alors bonjour à tous. Mon nom est Marie-Hélène Bolduc. Je suis l'une des 2 directrices des programmes et services Aujourd'hui, je vais vous parler du programme des aides techniques, donc, dont le but est de soutenir l'accès à des équipements et des technologies qui transforment des vies. Alors, nos priorités, c'est bien sûr la mobilité, la sécurité et l'indépendance de nos clients. Alors, si on parle d'accessibilité, on a, par exemple, des appareils d'ouverture, des systèmes d'ouverture de porte. Si on parle d'indépendance, on a les salles de bain, commodes, lits et matelas, des aides à la respiration. On parle aussi de lève-personne, puis d'autres équipements, par exemple, changement de batterie, réparation d'équipements que vous avez déjà à la maison. Et bien sûr, les aides à la mobilité telles que les fauteuils roulants, les déambulateurs. On parle aussi beaucoup pour CMT d'orthèses et de chaussures orthopédiques. Donc, voilà, pour faire une demande, il s'agit de prendre contact avec votre spécialiste de l'accès aux services de votre région et vous remplissez et vous signez la partie client du formulaire que vous allez retrouver sur notre site Internet ou que votre spécialiste de l'accès aux services peut vous faire parvenir. Il faut à chaque fois fournir une recommandation d'un professionnel de la santé qui va joindre sa recommandation soit sur le formulaire ou sur une lettre qui va être jointe à ce formulaire-là. Et il faut fournir autant que possible 2 soumissions. Alors, merci. Et maintenant, c'est au tour de ma collègue Danielle.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. I am the second director of programs and services, and my name is Danielle Compo-McLeod. And thank you, Marie, for going over our equipment program. Alongside with our equipment program, we have many personal support programs to support you in living your most best life with a neuromuscular disorder. So we have our personal equipment program, our community connections, knowledge sharing, and system navigation. And I'll talk just a little bit more about our programs. So system navigation, what does that really mean? So as we know, we will go through many different systems living with a neuromuscular disorder. We talk about being able to help. Our service specialists are here to walk alongside you to help you navigate these systems, whether that be the complex systems that are out in our communities, such as school, such as employment, sometimes it's transportation, housing, whatever needs that you experience living with the neuromuscular disorder, our service specialists are there to walk alongside you and to help you navigate those systems so that we can make sure that you are able to achieve your desired goal or what you desire to set out to accomplish. Next slide, please. So we do this through our system navigation programs, through our education programs, through our outreach programs. So we're able to go into school. So we talk about navigating that system of education. So we have a MuscleFax program that can go into the schools and create those connections with the children in the classrooms. Sometimes that's accompanied by what we call a lunch and learn program. And so that we're able to go into the schools and teach and educate the educators and the staff, as well as bringing awareness to the teachers and to the students. Our program outreach, so reaching out and providing that awareness. Also our emotional support program, our system service specialists are there to support you through the many changes of living with a neuromuscular disorder. We've been able to create many different connections and deliver those connections and services. And I will pass that over to my colleague, Stacey, to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Danielle. So as Danielle mentioned, we have really tried to bring our community together. And, you know, through COVID-19, this has been significantly difficult, as you can imagine. And we've really tried to pivot and try new things. And through this process, we've been able to, as we're doing today, come together in a virtual model. And we've really tried hard to bring people together through these networks. And Danielle is one of our staff that facilitates these networks. And what it is really bringing people together with a focus on some type of education or information, but then also provides ample time for peer support. And we've been surprised that throughout this process, there has been a real appetite and engagement. Our engagement has increased over the last few months. So most recently, we've heard that the CMT community would feel that they would benefit from a similar model. And what we really want to do is investigate. So as an organization, as we're committed to meeting the needs of the CMT community, continue to investigate if this is an area that MDC can provide some support. Again, we don't want to duplicate efforts. If there's a partnership opportunity, or if there is an identified need where we can bring people together from the CMT community, we'd be more than happy to investigate and facilitate that. So we will be circling back to the CMT community to really better understand if there's a need or desire to fulfill this, and we'd be happy to look at creating some type of plan or strategy to bring the CMT community through a network model. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kevin.
Just 1 second, Kevin. We're just making sure you're unmuted. Kevin, can I ask that you unmute on your end? It seems like it's there we go.
Okay, bear with me here.
You're good. We can hear you, Kevin.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Harrison, Director of Corporate and Business Development with Muscular Dystrophy Canada, and I have CMT Type 2. I'd like to tell you a bit about the virtual walk for CMT and provide an overview. We wanted to create a bilingual fundraising event that was meaningful to the Canadian CMT community and would benefit it directly. The Walk for CMT is a fundraising event taking place on Saturday, September 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, featuring special guest Ben Mulroney. The goal is to raise a minimum of $50,000, which will then be matched by anonymous donors for a campaign total of $100,000. Event proceeds will be invested in the following ways. 50% will be earmarked for CMT research, 25% for equipment like orthotics, walkers, and wheelchairs, and many other items for people impacted by CMT. And the remaining 25% will be put towards an eventual CMT conference in Canada. The walk is an event organized by the CMT community for the CMT community. We're also looking for corporate sponsors for the event, and we'll have the following sponsorship levels available, each offering different types of exposure. We have the $1,000 level, $2,500, $5,000, and $10,000 sponsors. Please give thought to companies you may know and would feel comfortable in approaching to sponsor the event, and let me know and I can facilitate. A sponsorship package outlining the different options will be ready shortly. To participate in the Walk for CMT, there are 3 easy steps to follow. Step 1, register as an individual, team captain, or join a team. If you're not in a position to put a team together, then please consider joining Linda Crabtree and myself on our team called Team CMT Canada. Step 2, send out the link to your walk page via email and social media, asking friends, family, and colleagues to sponsor you in the Walk for CMT. Donations made online will be sent tax receipts online. Paper pledge forms are also available for collecting offline donations via cash and checks. Step 3, watch the virtual show on Saturday, September 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then feel free to go for a walk or roll, bike ride, or however you want to do it in your own neighborhood. Take some pictures and videos which you can then share on social media, as well as on the CMT Canada Facebook page. I strongly recommend you join the CMT Canada Facebook page if you haven't already. It's a great place to connect with like-minded Canadians impacted by CMT. The walk or roll portion of the event is completely at your discretion, and up to you if you want to do it. I'm probably not the only person who's felt very alone in having this disease, who's felt like an alien that couldn't relate to anyone on the planet. I've come to discover that CMT is a fairly common disorder, that there are thousands of us in Canada that have it. It's actually one of the most common disorders, as Stacey mentioned, that MDC covers now. We're a big community, we're a big family, and we have the potential of becoming an unstoppable force of nature if we set our minds to it and work together. So my ask to you today, after this call, is take a few minutes, register for the Walk for CMT, go to WALK4CMT.ca and put a team together, participate. It'd be an honor to work with you on this. Up till now, CMT has been Canada's best kept secret. Those days are over, my friends. Let's join the fight, make some noise, and help bring this disease to its knees. Together, we can move mountains. I just received a question I wanted to address before I get off here. If somebody wanted to leave money in their will earmarked for CMT research and CMT programs and services, can they do that? Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. That's no problem at all. You just need to be clear in your will when writing it out that specifically it's earmarked for CMT. The Walk for CMT is just one of the many ways you can support our CMT campaign, and we are open to many forms of fundraising. Thank you for your consideration and looking forward to working with you on the walk. Over to you, Marie-Hélène.
Oui, merci Kevin. Alors, vous avez peut-être que certains d'entre vous ont répondu à un sondage dernièrement. On voulait savoir qu'est-ce que la communauté CMT aimerait que dystrophie musculaire fasse comme activité ou fournisse comme service pour eux. Alors, voici les réponses qu'on a eues. En premier, que DMC fournisse de l'information et crée des ressources spécifiques à la CMT. En fait, il y a vous avez entendu parler plutôt du webinaire sur la CMT qui a eu lieu et qui a eu lieu il y a quelques mois et que vous pouvez retrouver sur notre compte YouTube. Il y a aussi un feuillet CMT que vous pouvez retrouver sur notre site Internet. La communauté a aussi demandé à ce qu'on augmente la notoriété de la CMT, en particulier au sein de la communauté médicale. Et c'est ce qu'on tente avec ces webinaires-là, avec la marche qu'on va faire au mois de septembre, c'est d'augmenter la notoriété, développer des réseaux et une communauté CMT. Aujourd'hui, on a un beau réseau, une belle communauté qui commence à se développer, donc c'est merveilleux. Donner accès au financement pour des équipements, investir dans plus de recherche sur la CMT afin de trouver un ou des traitements. Alors, j'aimerais vous inviter, si ce n'est déjà fait, à vous inscrire à DMC. Alors, pour les personnes atteintes de CMT, il s'agit de remplir un formulaire que vous allez retrouver sur notre site Internet et dont le lien est fourni dans la présentation. Ce n'est pas très compliqué. Ce qu'on va vous demander, c'est de fournir des informations personnelles de base, vos coordonnées. On va demander, par contre, une confirmation du diagnostic par un professionnel de la santé et vous pouvez demander l'aide de votre spécialiste de l'accès au service si vous avez besoin ou si vous avez des informations. Pour les professionnels de la santé, les chercheurs, les membres de famille, amis ou bénévoles, il s'agit de nous rejoindre par téléphone ou par courriel et on va se faire un plaisir de vous inscrire. Alors voilà, merci à Daniel.
Thank you very much, Marie-Hélène. I believe now we're going to spend some time in the chat. There was quite a few questions that came in, and we do thank you so much for accessing the chat. And I'm just scrolling back up. So two of the questions that we have was, how do you use the holistic community? I'm a Reiki master, crystal healer. Finding the area of the brain to heal is quite difficult. Healing pain associated with CMT can be accomplished to a degree depending on the person's age. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues. Stacey, I believe, is going to answer the question of how we use the holistic community.
Thanks, Danielle. So yes, as our role in terms of that, really playing that key role around system navigation, we really rely on having access to that information. So if there is an opportunity to share that information, we've got a great mechanism through our service specialists. So we have service specialists in all provinces, and really our commitment is to reach every Canadian who's affected by a neuromuscular disorder. So during their interactions with an individual, they have a number of resources that they can pull from to share with our clients. We really want to play, again, we want to be that gatekeeper of information. So if there's information that you have on hand, you can send it to one of our program directors, our mission directors, and they can share that information with our service specialists so they can disseminate that information out to our clients as they have individual interactions with our clients. And again, it's our commitment so that our clients have information so they can make informed decisions, and they will, in the event that this is an area that is of interest of them, they will more than likely reach out.
Thank you. The next question is there any information about 4C, about type 4C of CMT? Have both gene mutations and little types of this information about this type?
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, that is quite common that we hear about certain subtypes of CMT. There's little information about. So I welcome you to email us at research@muscle.ca. That way we can begin that dialogue in terms of what questions that you do have about type 4 CMT. We can start to provide some information to you, and that might make you think of other questions around the gene mutation and around other types of CMT. But we do have information on type 4C that we can share with you if you just email us at research@muscle.ca. And I'll put it in the chat box as well.
Thank you. The next is a comment for those of you out in Atlantic Canada. If you would like to join a walk team, there's a team going, so that's great. If you check in the chat, you can see for joining. We move to the next question is, what do you know about acupuncture? Again, I'll transfer that back over to Homira.
Great, thanks so much, Danielle. So as part of our webinars, we haven't explored acupuncture yet, but I know as part of our network meetings, we have had individuals who are naturopaths and acupuncture specialists join and provide their experiences, which is a nice complement in terms of them providing their own personal experience. So that is two different ways that we can explore acupuncture. I should say that in the survey, acupuncture was noted as one of the supportive treatments, and some found it really helpful. Most recently, someone contacted me through the research hotline around CMT and deep tissue massage, and we got into looking at the literature for acupuncture. So I'm happy to share that information with you as well via the research hotline.
Thank you. The next question will be for Marie-Hélène. Does equipment funding include footwear and orthotics?
Oui, exactement, pour des appareils orthopédiques, des chaussures orthopédiques, des bottes orthopédiques. Et je vois qu'il y a aussi une autre question qui demande est-ce que c'est possible d'acheter des souliers dans lesquels je vais être capable de porter mes orthèses ou mes appareils orthopédiques. Alors, la réponse est oui, il faut faire une demande, comme je l'ai expliqué tout à l'heure, avec le formulaire et l'aide de votre spécialiste de l'accès au service. Il y a une autre question, Daniel, si tu me permets d'y répondre. Est-ce que les quadriporteurs sont des équipements qui peuvent être fournis? La réponse aussi est oui, c'est un appareil de mobilité. Donc, on accepte les demandes pour les appareils de mobilité, les équipements de mobilité comme ça. Il faut seulement noter que nous, on est le dernier agent payeur, c'est-à-dire qu'il faut s'assurer que ce ne soit pas couvert par le gouvernement ou par un programme gouvernemental avant de donner notre approbation. Merci.
Thank you, Marie-Hélène. The next question that I see in our English chat, and I should make a note of that Marie-Hélène will continue to answer the questions in our French chat. Thank you. What are your plans to build CMT centers of excellence across Canada? So what are the plans to build CMT centers of excellence across Canada? So I can turn that over to Stacey or Homira. Stacey, did you want to talk on that?
I think Homira both, I'm not sure if we're going to have the same response. So I will say that in terms of, as an organization, there isn't a current plan, but however, we do have a partnership with NMD4C. And really with the focus with this partnership is really ensuring that we have the infrastructure in terms of providing access, holistic care to all of the disorder types that we cover. Homira, I'll pass it over to you just in the event that you have something else to add.
No, Stacey, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say the Neuromuscular Disease Network, NMD4C, is one way where we can really start to build these centers of excellence, start to build the foundation for it or support the foundation for it. I would also want to mention that as part of that Neuromuscular Disease Network, we support early career members, so clinicians who are early in their careers. And really that way, by exposing them to information around CMT and updates around CMT will eventually help them to become leaders of these future centers, we hope.
Thank you very much. I'm just scrolling through our chat. Is there a practitioner listing for physical therapy, osteopath, etc., specifically identifying practitioners that know about CMT and treat CMT patients? I'll pass that back over to Homira.
Sure, yeah, I think this one falls with Danielle and I. In terms of, for our most recent webinar, this was a common question as well. And I mentioned Dr. Plamondon from Alberta Health Services was on the call earlier. She provided some suggestions of clinicians who would be helpful in terms of knowing about CMT. But this is also where I mentioned Danielle, in that service specialists, system navigators can really help to identify the clinical experts in your region. And so we'll work together, service specialists work as well with the research team to being able to identify these resources. But we do have a list from that webinar on some of these topics, particularly around physical therapy or where to buy those custom shoes that fit well with orthotics or AFOs.
Thank you, Homira. And yes, this is part of our system navigation program. Is our service specialists are experts in their area and will help to answer any of the questions that you may have, that you can feel free to reach out and ask the questions. If they don't know, they will let you know, and they will do the research needed to come back and provide you some information and help to kind of navigate and connect with those different resources. We know in each and every province in Canada, there are many different resources available to our clients, so they will navigate those systems and help to kind of bring back and present the information that they are able to find.
I'm just going to quickly just add to that too, Danielle. I know a question that often comes up is, do you know who the neuromuscular specialists are around the country? And so we do have that information. We have a directory of the large neuromuscular centers. And as part of our equipment work program, we've worked with allied healthcare professionals in different regions. So yes, feel free to reach out to us, because then we'll be able to introduce you to those specialists, allied healthcare professionals that have treated CMT or managed patients with CMT before.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm just seeing that the next question is there a list somewhere of the equipment that qualifies and is covered? So yes, you can access that information. I'll pass that to Marie-Hélène, who oversees our equipment program.
Oui, alors il n'y a pas de liste, il y a une liste générale qui est disponible. Par contre, je vous conseille de contacter vos spécialistes de l'accès aux services, parce que comme les programmes gouvernementaux sont différents de région en région, eux pourront plus vous éclairer sur ce qui est couvert dans votre province. Je voyais aussi qu'il y avait une autre question sur est-ce que le reçu provenant du magasin est suffisant. En fait, il faut vraiment suivre les procédures et faire la demande avant, la faire approuver. Et les chaussures ou les orthèses ou les chaussures spécialisées doivent être achetées dans un magasin médical ou un magasin spécialisé dans ce type d'équipement-là, pas dans n'importe quel magasin de chaussures.
Thank you very much, Marie-Hélène. The next question in our question section is, I was advised I had CMT in 1971/72. There was very little information available that time. Should I consider being reassessed?
I can pass it over to Daria, but I can start. I would say that we have, as part of the most recent webinar, Dr. Jerry Pfeffer from Calgary did talk about how there are new mutations that have been identified, and the panels, the gene panels, are a lot more sophisticated. So I would consult with your neuromuscular specialist. They will be able to tell you if it would warrant to get a new genetic panel testing done. But I would consult with them. Having said that, I know that there are more advancements with our gene panels detecting for CMT.
Thank you. And the second question in our chat is, can you put the neuromuscular doctor list on your website so people don't have to call you? I think I can start with answering that too, as that we know that in every different area, there's specialists across our country. So we do advise that you do reach out and connect to the service specialists as we can make sure, or to the research hotline, as we can make sure to give you the most relevant information for your area and to help answer any other questions you may have around seeking out the correct specialist.
I just want to expand on that to say that's definitely ultimately the goal as well. And also in Canada, in different parts of the region, we know some individuals don't see a neurologist, they see a physiatrist. And so when I talk about the large neuromuscular center, sometimes I'm speaking about the neuromuscular specialist, the neurologist, but as I mentioned, Dr. Stephanie Plamondon is a physiatrist who sees CMT patients. So we really want to get a good comprehensive list before posting it, but that's definitely an objective and a goal for us to have that directory available.
Perfect. I'm just scanning the chat. Marie-Hélène, is there any on your chat that we didn't cover?
Oui, merci Daniel. Il y a une autre question qui concerne la nutrition et CMT. Y a-t-il des éléments ou régimes qui aident à réduire les symptômes? Je ne sais pas si Homira peut-être peut répondre à cette question.
I can go ahead and try, Marie. So we did have a webinar on nutrition, healthy eating, and I can definitely share that after today's session for you to review. It is on the YouTube page. I would also say for some individuals, CMT does affect their ability with swallowing and the speech muscles as well. So that could impact which type of diet someone would recommend. This is also one where we would recommend you to contact your service specialist, as we might be able to highlight or identify a dietitian or a nutritionist who has seen CMT patients in the past. And that would be able to really provide individualized response in terms of a diet that you could take.
Thank you again. And I'm just noticing, how do we reach out for the research email? So Homira, if you could include that one more time in the chat. And the second, our final question is, how do we find our service specialists? A great question. You can find their information on our website under Access Help. It will be specific to the province. We'll list your service specialists. You also will be receiving an email after this presentation with the service specialist's contact information in that email, as well as a link to complete a small survey that should only take just 1 or 2 minutes to really let us hear if there's anything that we missed that you would still like information on, also to provide us feedback on today's presentation, as well as if there's any other programs or services or anything that we can help to meet your needs. We really are here to walk alongside you. We're very excited about being able to engage the CMT community. We look forward to the events that are coming up, and we thank you so much for taking the time. We know everybody is very busy on virtual meetings, and so we thank you for taking this time out of your day today to join, and we look forward to connecting with you in the very near future and can't wait to see you at the walk.